Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Should Constantine 2 be part of the DCEU, and will it? Well, I'm a bit concerned with David Zaslav's obsession with Kevin Feige and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because let me be clear here. The inception of the Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't genius, isn't rocket science. It's an obvious thing to do, but you're screaming at me, Mick. Nobody else has achieved it and been successful doing it. It's true. Very few people decided to do this before in Hollywood, and when they have, recently, it's failed. But it isn't rocket science to create a comic book universe in live action and connect each film with the last film. But to be clear, very few MCU movies are great movies. It's a fact. And for me, this is my concern. Wouldn't it be better to kind of just make self-contained DC movies that are great movies, like the Batman, like the Joker movie, and if you're a Snyder fan like me, Man of Steel, BVS, Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, will always be remembered. Damn it! Superman the movie, Batman 89, Batman Begins, all three of those movies are three of the best films ever made, let alone, the best comic book films ever made. And how can I forget The Dark Knight, which is seen by its peers as one of the greatest comic book movies and movies ever made. You can see there where individual movies with their own little franchises that kind of continue, like the 4 Superman movies with Christopher Reeve did, or with kind of Tim Burton's 2 Batman movies, but even the Joel Schumacher movies were part of that universe. Individual franchises, rather than having a connected universe. Wouldn't it be better just to make a Justice League movie rather than building something up like Marvel did and then doing a Justice League? I think we have to take a look at this, and David Zaslav's obsession with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is obvious why he's obsessed with it. It makes a hell of a lot of money. He wants to make the same money. So did the people who started the DC Extended Universe, but they were never going to get to that success with Zack Snyder at the helm. As I say, Zack Snyder makes great movies, but not necessarily movies that a commercial audience are going to embrace as one franchise, and that became a problem really quickly, because that's what the studio wanted. Then you ask the studio previous leadership, why did you bring Zack Snyder in the first place? Why did you allow Christopher Nolan to come in and make these decisions when you wanted commercial success? And you can argue that Nolan had commercial success with the Dark Knight trilogy. He had commercial success with The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight Rises made money because of The Dark Knight, and Batman Begins didn't make, I don't think it even made 500 million. Batman Begins for me is the best out of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. That's just my personal opinion. But as I say, there's very few great movies within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you can have a profitable, hollow, connective franchise, and you're making money, and people will say, well, Mick, that's the name of the game. And you're absolutely right. And I can imagine a connected, successful DC universe being awesome. I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy it. But if we go after the Marvel formula, which is bright, funny, it takes away artistic integrity. Now, looking at Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby, who are running Warner Brothers Pictures now, and David Zaslav himself, these are all supporters of artistic integrity, of a freedom of a director and an artist to create and paint their own vision on the canvas. So I doubt, even if we do get a DC connected universe, that it will be the MCU. But there is a decision to be made here, because from what I can see right now, I can't see how David Zaslav creates one universe, connected universe. We've got the Batman franchise, we've got the Joker franchise, we've got the DCEU at this moment in time. And I think the Constantine sequel being officially greenlit by Warner Brothers Discovery poses a very interesting question. Because if Constantine isn't part of the DCEU, and I'm guessing it won't be, but I could be wrong about that, because squeezing something else that was clearly not created to be part of the DCEU and forcing it in there could be a very uncomfortable realization. I've said this before. You can't cheat your way to a successful connected universe franchise. You can't cheat your way to the top table of comic book movies. It's actually a lot easier just to make individual movies part of, so the Joker is part of the Black Label, and that's cool. Maybe they'll make that a connected franchise. And the DCEU as a franchise has failed for a multitude of reasons that would take my whole day to go into today. So I think it's an interesting situation. What Zaslav, Adby and DeLuca, which we're kind of guessing, according to this Hollywood Reporter article I read to you yesterday, they reckon Adby and DeLuca could end up running DC Studios as well. You can't be running Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Studios at the same time. This is what happened with Hamada. Hamada really was an employee of Warner Brothers Pictures and was running DC Film. He was being puppeted, his strings being pulled by Toby Emmerich. We don't want to see the same thing again. Now, I've researched, Mike DeLuca is a good man. He loves comic books. He saw the potential in an Iron Man movie where Robert Shea, who was running New Line Cinema at the time, didn't see how that would work. And, Robert Shea was a great corporate guy at New Line Cinema. He just didn't see it. So I would be very happy with Mike DeLuca being the actual president of DC Films and just allowing Pam Adby to run WB Pictures. I think that's great. I think that would be a great way to work, because Pam and Mike have got a great corporate relationship. So that relationship between Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Studios will be a lot, let's say, refreshing than the relationship and dynamic between Hamada, Jason Kilar and Toby Emmerich. Because Kilar and Emmerich were pulling his strings. He had no freedom. So I think that's the issue with that situation. Because if you have a DC president that hasn't got the freedom to make their own choices, then what is the point in that situation? So that's why I think that Constantine 2 has posed a very interesting question, because if you listen to all these reports, Zaslav wants one definitive DC cinematic universe, and he wants nothing on streaming. That's why he's going to cancel all these other DC shows. Ultimately, Superman and Lois, Stargirl, all of them, they're all going to go. And, this new Gotham Knights thing doesn't make much sense, and I can only see it running for a season. I don't even know why they're bothering with it. But anyway, getting on back to the case in hand. Will Constantine 2 be part of the DCEU? And should it? And I think this is the situation. Now, as I've said, because we've got so many different films from different universes, it's really contradictory to think that David Zaslav is looking for one defined universe. Because I don't understand how this is a thing. The only thing I can see, as I've mentioned many times here on my channel, that he's just going to let all these movies play out and then launch his 10-year plan. Maybe he's just using these other movies as a buffer. I don't know. But I don't think Constantine should be part of the DCEU for sure, because I don't think it, I know it wasn't supposed to be part of a cinematic universe. And it's my belief, as much as I think it would be fun to have one defined cinematic universe, I think in terms of the art form and making great DC movies like we've had so many of in the past 30 to 40, 50 years, starting with Superman the movie and going on with many other great DC movies, they weren't part of an extended cinematic universe. It gave the directors of those movies the freedom to make their movie. Those movies that I've listed, made money without being part of a cinematic universe. Now we live in different times, and corporate Hollywood will always jump on what makes lots of money, and they'll say, get me one of them. And that will always happen in Hollywood. The problem is, because the MCU has become so progressive now and people are tiring of it, I mean, there is an advantage there for WB and DC, because Zaslav and Discovery are not progressives themselves, so they can focus on the entertainment element of a DC extended universe that's connected. They can take advantage of what's going on right now with the MCU, and I can see that. And if you get a cinematic universe right, there's money to be made, and I agree. And it could be entertaining and it could be fun. I just feel there's more potential in just making films instead of a connective universe, because you can't have a connective universe and the Batman universe and the Joker universe. And if Constantine 2 is part of another universe, you can't have your cake and eat it. Or can you? Can you actually, in fact? Can you have all these individual movies that are nothing to do with the connective franchise, but also have the connective franchise as well? I'm sure you could. But it's not a multiverse strategy like Walter Hamada was planning. And here's the thing, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Constantine 2. For me, as much as I love the idea of a successful, well-made and well-executed, defined universe, I think the history of Warner Brothers and how it's made money when it was run well is just to focus on the movie and make a great movie. This has been the DCEU Daily here on Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.